German media claims police detained the wrong suspect over the terror attack in Berlin, with the armed terrorist still believed to be at large. In the meantime, security in Europe is once again being questioned as Germany and other European states had been warned of potential terror attacks. Also this hour, the Russian ambassador to Turkey is shot dead in Ankara, a day before a key talk on Syria between Russia, Turkey and Iran. Thanks for joining us here on RT International Live from Moscow. I'm Daniel Hawkins. Lots of breaking news to get through this hour. First to Germany, where Berlin's police chief is now reporting that officials are uncertain whether they have the correct suspect in relation to the deadly Berlin attack. On Monday, a truck rammed into a Christmas market in a main square in the capital, killing 12 people, injuring almost 50 others in what's confirmed as an act of terror. Well, we will be getting reaction from our Berlin correspondent Peter Oliver just in a little while. The breaking news coming in, though, from that ongoing investigation, as we said there, Berlin police are uncertain whether they have the wrong suspect. Of course, the information coming in pretty quickly after that a Pakistani asylum seeker from Afghanistan had been put into custody. He is still in custody, but the German Interior Minister reporting that he is denying any involvement whatsoever in this, and the police chief now warning to people that the temporary arrested suspect has denied the offence. Therefore, for people to be on a particularly alert level, the suspect may be armed and is still at large and could be obviously at risk of committing further attacks. That news coming in from Berlin. Well, we can now cross live to Georg Mayer. He's a member of the European Parliament for the Freedom Party Austria. Thanks for joining us here on RT International. Georg, I don't know if you were listening to that breaking news just coming in from the investigation in Germany. Of course, the alleged attacker was arrested, detained pretty quickly after that attack, but now news coming in that the real attacker may still be at large. Does this perhaps create a risk of further attacks in Germany here? Is this a failing by the security forces?
Well, I don't know. First of all, let me say that it's a really sad day for all of us in Europe, and our thoughts are with the victims and their relatives today. I don't know anything about this breaking news now. What you can see is that medias in Europe are reporting different things than you can read on Facebook, for example. So that makes me worry also a little bit.
Indeed, and this latest attack has obviously triggered a bit of a backlash in Germany over the country's refugee policy. Some politicians are being very critical, saying that Mrs. Merkel's policy has absolutely failed. The German election is coming up next year. What do you feel are the ramifications, the consequences here for Mrs. Merkel?
You know, the problem is the reaction. I'm really fed up with Je suis Charlie, pray for Paris, pray for Nice, now pray for Berlin. It's an absolutely failed reaction of the politicians, and especially of Merkel, because she's responsible for her politics. The German chancellor let people in, the so-called refugees. They didn't even ask for names, they didn't even ask for their birth date, and that's what you see now. We were already warning at that time that there will be terrorists coming into Germany and then to Europe, and that's what we face that we face now.
You mentioned just a minute ago the different news that's coming out from mainstream media and from social media. Why do you think it took so long for authorities to admit that it was a terror attack?
Well, because they want to close their eye that they have now a terror attack in their in Berlin, in their main city. So I think they want to close their eyes and saying, no, that was not an attack. We have several experience in other cities where the government said, no, it was not a terrorist act, but at the end it was a terrorist act. It's what you can see on other medias, what you can see on social medias. It's quite sure that it was a terrorist attack in Berlin.
There have been warnings, of course, about another possible attack, specifically in the EU. That was information given by Europol, that crowds of people could be targeted at festivals, at markets, etc. I mean, is there perhaps a case to answer for the security forces here that they failed to prevent this attack? Of course, on the other hand, it was a lone wolf attack. Is it perhaps impossible to create a fully safe, fully foolproof system?
Well, until now, the German administration always took out different attacks. You remember there were there was an attack planned at the football stadium. They catched these terrorists, but it will happen, and we always knew that it will happen one day, that they will be successful with their attacks in Germany, and so that's what happened yesterday.
Just going back to the mainstream media reaction, we've been looking at some of the narratives coming out there, and a lot of the media has been discussing it in a particular context. Let's just take a quick listen to the mainstream media reaction.
In Germany, is there a feeling that Chancellor Merkel got it wrong?
Actually, we need to be very precise and make clear and counter those politicians who actually, to be frank, try to benefit from it and try actually to hijack these horrible events and to push on their own anti-immigration.
That is politics, isn't it? And
yes, but it's also politics to respond to it and actually go back to the right Russia.
You heard Russia mentioned there, obviously, in the wider context as well, of Russian accusations of hacking, of meddling in elections, of being the main threat to Europe. But what is exactly the issue? I'm struggling to understand. A terrorist kills 12 people in the center of Berlin at Christmas, and Russia is still the main threat to Europe. Is that a narrative you agree with?
Yeah, I have on my desk.
Connection with that. So, but it's a kind of silly argumentation, you know. And we know the argumentation we will hear from Merkel and all the other responsible for the politics. Today there will be consternation and sorrow. The day after tomorrow there will be confession for change. We're going to change something. The third day after there will be warnings of overreaction, warnings of right-wing parties using that attack for their politics. And then they will go on to everyday agenda and nothing will change until we see the next attack. But that's something we don't want to. So if you ask me, and if you ask, of course, all the others here in our group in the parliament, I think Merkel has to resign. That's the outcoming of her politics, and she has to resign to go on with other politics.
It'll certainly be interesting to see how that plays out over coming weeks and months, and indeed with the German election coming up. Georg Mayer, member of the European Parliament for Freedom Party, Austria. Thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Well, the head of Berlin police has just said that they are unable to confirm that the man arrested immediately in the aftermath of that Berlin attack was actually the lorry driver himself. I believe we can go to get a quote now from that police chief. Let's take a listen. We'll bring that grab to you in just a second. In the meantime, let's actually get some more on the German reaction. Cross live to RT's Peter Oliver. He's in Berlin right now to bring us the latest. Peter, thanks for joining us. What's the latest reaction been from Chancellor Merkel on what's been going on?
Well, before we get to the reaction from the Chancellor, just to update you on the very latest that we're getting from the German media. They're reporting on these claims that are quoting a police source saying that the 23-year-old Pakistani man who was taken into custody and was the main suspect who accused of being behind the terror attack that killed 12 people in Berlin last night. That police source is quoted as saying this could be the wrong person who's in in jail there. We're seeing a series of messages then come out from the Berlin police saying that the man that they have in custody, this 23-year-old Pakistani asylum seeker, has denied these charges against him, and because he's denied those charges, they can't rule out that the actual perpetrator isn't still at large within the city of Berlin. They've told people to be cautious going around the capital here. Now, what we did hear from the Chancellor earlier on, Angela Merkel said that this was a terrorist attack, that we could assume that this had been a terrorist attack. She also went on to say that it would be a terrible situation if this terrorist attack had been carried out by somebody who'd come to Germany to seek asylum.
I know that it would be particularly difficult for us all to endure if this act was committed by a person who asked for protection and asylum in Germany.
Well, shortly before the attack took place on Monday evening, Angela Merkel had been giving another speech in which she strongly defended her policy on refugees.
People need more time to be convinced, and some don't even listen. It is also part of the diversity of opinions. In this case, you just have to continue your path. If it crosses the limit, the state has to intervene at some point and say, our lives consist of us living with our diversity, and diversity makes us richer rather than poorer.
Well, there has been a strong backlash from senior political figures here in Germany and elsewhere from right across the political spectrum for obviously the tragic incident that took place, the tragic terrorist attack that took place, but also for Angela Merkel's handling of it. We've heard from some of her harshest critics, members of Alternative for Germany's MEPs, saying that those 12 people were Merkel's dead, but also her allies have been saying that they have to be changes. Her allies that are part of Angela Merkel's own coalition saying that changes need to be made, and also the one member of her own party saying that they were currently in a state of war. But we've also heard criticism for the policies of Angela Merkel coming from politicians from far and wide, including Marine Le Pen, the leader of the Front National in France.
The emotion is there. The outrage is very strong. How many massacres and deaths will be necessary for our governments to stop bringing huge numbers of migrants into our countries without borders, when we know for sure terrorist Islamists are among them?
So to recap you on the very latest in this story, police sources saying that they may not have the right man in custody. Their main suspect was a 23-year-old Pakistani asylum seeker who was accused of being the driver who mowed down so many people at a Christmas market in a truck. We're now hearing from the police that they may not have the right man, which would, according to what they're saying, mean that the actual perpetrator of this heinous act was still at large.
Indeed, certainly puts the public at risk of perhaps further attacks, as the Berlin police chief there saying, for people to be on alert as that very fluid situation develops. RT's Peter Oliver there bringing us the very latest from Berlin. Well, eyewitnesses claim that there was no real police presence at the scene when the attack took place.
It happened so fast there was nothing we could do to stop it. If we tried to stop it, we would have been crushed. Definitely looked deliberate. My girlfriend said it appeared that the truck was not stopping. There was no attempt to stop it. It was careering indefinitely, bashing into the stalls where people would be facing the stalls, and then carried on through. There was no particular police around at the time because everybody was happy. It just carried on through. I think it was stopped by just bits of scenery and truck inside it. So, not truck inside, sorry, bits of scenery and bits of stalls inside the truck. So it appeared to be stopped just outside the market, having looped through the edge. There was no attempt. When you see a truck, when it's braking, the cab dips down, doesn't it? But when it's not braking, it carries on up. And it didn't look like it was stopping. There was no brake sounds. It was clearly going straight on through. So whether it was a driver who was just drunk and going through, or whether it was lost control of the vehicle, or whether it was a deliberate attempt, I can't tell you, but there was no attempt to stop that we could see. It was definitely carrying on.
Sir, how's it work? You cannot be safe anywhere. I come from this sort of place, and I'm here to witness this, and I feel like death is following you everywhere. It's not easy.
Actually, we didn't know what happened first. We tried to ask people, and nobody knew, actually, because they were in shock. There are people like running this way and trying to go the opposite way to see what happened, and we didn't actually see it as it was running through people, but we saw it parking. It was like a Scania truck. Yeah, it was a big one, and the glass was broken, and the windshield was smashed.
Well, comparisons have been drawn between the incident in Berlin and the massacre which happened in the French city of Nice. The attackers used trucks to deliberately plough through crowds, and both took place in busy areas full of tourists and foreigners. Despite calls to take greater precautions to prevent this type of attack, we've seen it repeated at the Christmas market in the German capital. This has many questioning the continued failings of security in Europe. Let's go live to our correspondent, Anastasia Churkina, who's in London, to bring us the latest. Nasa, thanks for joining us. The EU, Germany, other countries have all been warned of a possible attack. Intelligence coming in specifically from Europol about this. Will this be viewed as a failing, perhaps, by the security forces?
Well, Dan, certainly lots of questions being asked about the state of security in Europe yet again following this latest terrorist attack in Germany. Now, we have to, of course, keep in mind that just in November, we saw the U.S. Most recently update its Europe travel alert, where the United States was warning that ISIS and its affiliates are continuing to plan attacks in Europe. They said that the risk was heightened, and they were calling for cautiousness when it comes to holiday festivals, markets, and other public places. We also, of course, have to remember that the attacks that took place in Germany this year alone have also been raising lots of questions about whether or not lessons have in fact been learned. Well, in addition, we also have to keep in mind that earlier this month, Europol, Europe's law enforcement agency, did warn that ISIS is likely to carry out more terrorist attacks in Europe.
This is the most serious terrorist threat we've faced in Europe for at least a decade, and even in the last 6 months, I think, we're faced by a determined new strategy by Islamic State to take the fight to Europe, to our streets, with a more aggressive form of international terrorism.
So we've seen all of these red flags and warnings, yet somehow this attack was in fact possible. Now, when it comes to the UK, we do know that the police here have been talking about stepping up their game reviewing their policies. But we have to say that earlier today we went to several tourist spots as well as several Christmas markets to see whether or not there are any visible signs of change. And we have to say that there was no police presence, there were no metal detectors, there was nothing along the lines of security at a few Christmas markets that we visited here in London, so it really did look like it was just simply business as usual.
Indeed, many questions are asked, many will probably continue to be asked as the Christmas season gets here. RT's Anastasia Churkina giving us the latest on that Berlin attack and the situation in London. Well, we will, of course, be following this story and investigation throughout the day and keep you up to date as more information keeps coming in.